meeting. Let's call it order. Peggy, can we have the roll call, please?
Here.
Here.
Present.
Here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peggy. Item 3, the approval of the October 11th, 2022 meeting minutes. They were all in the packet. Any questions, comments in regards to the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So moved. Thank you all. Item 4, public appearances. We have the opportunity to allow people to discuss to the park board any items. Doesn't necessarily need to be on the agenda. We do have the opportunity to limit the length of time, but also if something is not on the agenda, we do limit the communications to questions versus any other further discussion. Is there anybody who would like to make any appearances? You didn't have to say no, Mike.
Yes, you did.
Hearing none, move on to item 5. Reports from the village officers. Item 5A. Director of Public Works report, including statuses of the updates from the J.C. Park redevelopment project and the Dish Park progress. Or anything else?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I don't think I know most of you guys. I'm filling in for Jeff today. So Elise is going to be helping me out here on some of these projects that I'm not as familiar with. The big update that I do have is on J.C. Park. That one is pretty much buttoned up for the winter. So pavement is down and striped, and I think seed and mat is all out, and pickleball courts are pretty much finished up. So they're shutting down for the winter, and things should be progressing. The concession stand building is out to bid right now, so those should be coming in likely in December, I believe. But otherwise, we'll just kind of be moving forward with that, and then with design over the winter.
Very good. Does the park board, any members have any questions, comments?
Do we have any idea on the one field that's at 250? Fence-wise is 250. Do we have any idea what they did base plug-wise and stuff like that? Like how many sets they put in?
We could take a look at the landscaping plans. I don't know off the top of my head
Okay.
what was installed
I
there.
would say the same thing.
Yeah. It's a good Jeff question.
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll try to get back to you on that next month.
Mark, can I just one question on this?
Certainly.
My last communication with Jeff was that the fencing was gonna be done this year. Is that now delayed, or will the fencing be done?
Also an excellent Jeff question. Jeff should be back in the office on Thursday, I believe, of this week, so I'll let him know that you had questions and would like a response.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? Thank you for your report. Appreciate it. 5B, Director of Community Development Report. Item 1, on that Corp Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan status and schedule. There's information in the packet as well.
I can share a little update on this, Mark. So you might remember last month we kind of went through those different tiers, those options for our 5-year park plan update, and you all recommended sort of the middle of the road option, the standard option. The Planning Commission is also looking at an update to our comp plan, and they selected kind of the standard middle of the road option as well. So we took that to the village board last night, and they have approved the standard option for both plans. So we'll be meeting with our consultants from Vanderwall next Monday to just kind of go over the scope and schedule. So probably at the December meeting, I'll have a little bit more of an outline of what to expect from the corp plan perspective and how you all will be involved, you know, sketching out kind of public workshops, surveys, things like that. Again, there are opportunities to kind of marry some of the work done with the comp plan and the corp together. So if there's a community survey, you can ask questions about park and recreation as well as other, you know, land use, transportation type issues. So we'll see kind of what that'll look like. That'll start to get sketched out here in December, and then we'll take us through most of the year with the goal of having that wrapped up by next December.
Wonderful. Any park board members have questions or comments? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Elise. Appreciate it. Item 5B, number 2, update on Viridian Green Preservation Park plans.
All right, so I believe we shared these plans with you all a couple of months ago, and I don't know if Viridian guys were here at that meeting, so I'll let them come up and introduce themselves, and they have a bit of a presentation. But those the plans for Greenview Preserve, the kind of northern end of the Maryhill neighborhood, just behind the cemetery there, north end of town, have gotten revised a little bit. Addition of some park space, some rearrangement of some of the homes as well. So I'll let them come up and kind of walk you through some of those changes. And then we do have the preliminary plat and then some of the zoning approvals going to the village board this coming Monday. So assuming no major changes from you all, we'll kind of keep that moving forward. And then the final plat will come at a later date as well and kind of set some of those spaces in stone.
Great.
So I'll flip over to their presentation, have you guys come up and introduce yourselves and kind of walk us through the plan.
Well, good evening. Brian Munson with Vanderwall and Associates. Here with me as well, Matt Brink with Viridian Homes and Dan Day from Donofrio Kotke. So happy to be here to present an update on the neighborhood. As mentioned, this has been through the Plan Commission review, and we are on our way to the Common Council, but always good to give updates as plans have evolved and reflected some of the comments received, and specifically some revisions that have happened to the park systems within the neighborhood. So probably jump to the next one. Just again, to get us kind of grounded, the property on the northern portion of the community, north of the Maryhill neighborhood, really finishing off a neighborhood that's been in process for many years. Zooming in a little bit closer, not a lot in the way of features on the site outside a few tree rows and, of course, farm fields. And so we're happy to kind of finish this neighborhood off and really begin implementation of a diverse mixed residential neighborhood. Next slide, please. And jump to the next one. And this is what it looks like today. So what you see on here is a blend of for sale single family product in both some attached twin homes, some carriage lane, and some front loaded single family. So a very broad spectrum of price points and formats associated with the neighborhood. As it relates to the parks components of this neighborhood, we've made a couple of changes in the southeast corner of the project to really create an opportunity for some diversified park space within the project. If you can jump to the next page. And we'll walk through these very quickly. Again, we have twin homes, which are attached single family for sale product within the neighborhood. And these are some photos from some Viridian neighborhoods. So all the pictures in the presentation are from actual projects. So we've been working within Dane County over the last 25-ish some odd years, probably more than I care to admit sometimes. But so when we talk about these projects, we've built examples throughout Dane County and southeast Wisconsin. So we have single family on a carriage lane, so on an alley. So some smaller compact lots, garages in the back, and you can see how that starts to relate and create a streetscape. And then, of course, more traditional, conventional single family as well, scattered throughout the neighborhood. What this allows us to do is introduce a price range of greater than $400,000 within the project. So you can see entry-level attainable housing spanning all the way up to market rate, move up, and luxury housing within the context of one neighborhood. Then next slide, please. And so to bring it back to the parks components. You can see here the idea of, and just in kind of a big picture view schematically, the opportunity to link the Rustic Vineyards neighborhood park, expand and grow on the eastern portion, connect it through a new open space within this project with a trail connection, allows us to preserve some of the trees along that border, the southern border of their property, and then a trail connection down to the Maryhill Park that exists. So opportunities both to string some park spaces together, preserve some existing trees, and offer some diversity of open space within the neighborhood. We do have a small kind of pocket park in the Phase 1 area in the northwest side to offer some space for the near-term residents in the Phase 1 area. But we're excited about the overall park plan and what it kind of does for the greater neighborhood by offering these kind of series of outdoor rooms. Next slide. And We're looking forward to working with the village very closely on the design of these spaces. We anticipate some trail systems connecting these, opportunities for different scale tot lots, passive and active recreational uses within the park spaces. And again, we're interested in feedback about what those facilities are as we move into the implementation of the project. The other aspect that we'd be excited to work with the village to do is to try to get these implemented very early in the project. So partnering with the village, potentially utilizing some of the park impact fees that would be generated from the project to put a park in up front so that it's available for residents in the near term. Something we've done with different municipalities throughout Dane County and are excited to potentially work with the village to do that. So not a concrete proposal yet for what those facilities are, but again, as we move into implementation, we'll work closely with staff and with the board to help get some of those facilities put in as quickly as we can. The other aspect that's also coupled up with this is we know there's some stormwater management needs for the project, and we really like to try to design those in concert with park spaces and design them in a way that they become an extension of that outdoor room, that they're not just a square engineering solution, but they actually have some passive recreation opportunities, whether that's mowed paths or seating areas or just landscaping, so that it's not seen as strictly engineering, but part of the nature restoration on the site is something that we pursue with a lot of our neighborhoods. So we're excited to partner up those spaces alongside the park space. The net changes that we've implemented since the first concept brings this up so that there is full dedication of park space for the project. We're actually slightly over. And so that new park space in the southeast corner, coupled up with the extension of Rustic Vineyards and then the tot lot in the northwest piece, delivers on the park dedication requirements for the project, and really, we think creates a better solution, and we appreciated the feedback from the neighbors and from the Plan Commission that led us in this direction. So that's kind of the overview of where things are, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. Down in the southwest corner, next to the stormwater, is that a green space there just south of that?
That'll be an infiltration basin.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So that southwest corner, there's an existing stormwater basin there that's going to have to be expanded and rebuilt to meet today's standards.
Right.
And so that will largely be stormwater management
Okay,
components.
great. Yeah, I have just a couple others. What's the total number of units then?
We're at 210 total units on the neighborhood.
And the price range? Who knows these days, but
Targeted price range would be low 300s, kind of attainable housing, as hard as that is to say sometimes.
Right.
But, attainable housing for folks that are moving out of apartments into
Sure.
single-family ownership, spanning all the way up into the mid-700s and possibly more, depending on selections by future buyers.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Andy?
Again, thank you for coming. It's been interesting to see the changes of the park plan and the plots from August. I have August, September, and November here, just looking at the changes, and I appreciate you guys, taking to heart some of the feedback that we gave as far as the need for the open space, and then I think having the paths connecting to Rustic Vineyards, right next door, and then again going through down across where that Oak Street lot would be, going down to the Maryhill Park. I think that's good. It's going to help the neighbors, kind of explore the area as well, but then connect the park system, together as well. The one thing that I was worried about in the last revision was it looked like a lot of the park space got eaten up by stormwater, so I'm glad to see that change you guys made down in the southeast corner, where you kind of took that little circle with that outlot there and moved some of those units around and put a more dedicated park space, so I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Judy?
Again, thank you for coming. I'm just wondering about like the tot lots and stuff that are going to be the first things going. Are you going to be putting the swing sets up and the other stuff too, or is that something we have to raise money for?
Village.
Well, one of the things we're considering and would be welcoming a conversation over is, of course, there's the dedication piece, and then there's the park improvement fees that have to be paid for the project. And one of the things we've done with other communities is taking those park improvement fees that will be paid and applying them to putting facilities in early, so that as soon as a park space is available, whenever possible, we'd like to improve it to the extent that we can, because we do anticipate, obviously, residents wanting to have that space.
Right.
And the sooner we can deliver that, the better it is for the whole community. We also recognize that there may need to be some discussions about how much park fees are generated, how much facilities are desired, and matching those up. So there have been examples where we've installed a tot lot, the community has fundraised for a shelter or installed a shelter with other funds. So there's kind of a conversation that'll have to happen depending on what facilities are desired for the space, and then develop a projection of what it would cost to implement that. Again, something we're very comfortable doing over the course of the next steps with developers agreements and conversations about park designs, and we can work through the details when we get to that stage.
So are you and Jeff working on that?
Yep, we will, yeah. So once we get through these kind of basic planning approvals, we'll move into the development agreement and understanding of which fees you're getting paid when, with the phases, and how some of these impact fees will be applied. We'll also kind of be leaning on our park plan and our updated park plan too, to see what types of facilities do we need in terms of playing fields, playground areas. Obviously, some, just due to the nature of the size of some of these parks, will probably lend themselves more to small playgrounds versus, obviously not room for a big playing field up here by the pond. But we'll definitely be working closely with Viridian as we get all those development agreements
Yeah, because Netherwood
lined
was
up.
done right away, and that really makes it
Right.
nice.
Yeah, it's nice when it's
Yep.
done right away. And yeah, typically those impact fees are collected when we get the building permits pulled. And so that'll be something we discuss with them, if we kind of collect some of those fees up front and then work to get some of that infrastructure, the park, playground equipment or whatever it might be in on the front end. And it's kind of retroactively applied to building permits. We'll kind of work out those details in the coming months with them.
Okay. I was trying to talk them into just going ahead and,
Just go ahead and do it. Well, we got to move some dirt around first, Judy. So first things to come.
Not their first rodeo.
Yeah.
I know, but it's worth asking, right?
right.
You don't ask,
Never
you don't
hurts,
get.
right?
Brian, in your slides, do you have kind of the phasing map here on a later slide, or I can pull it up on some of the other?
I think it is in some of the background slides towards the end.
Yeah, it's in the packet too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we tried to keep all the different.
Oh, there we go.
There we
Yeah,
go, yes.
So,
And that's over the older concept. I apologize, I missed that one, but it's
Yeah.
largely the same. We'd be starting off in the western portion and then bridging either to the north or the east, depending upon what types of housing the demand is. So we usually try to create a roadmap of where it's all going to go, but it's very much market dependent.
But could you tell me how much total parkland was in this development? Do you have a size?
I believe it's about 4.2 acres of park space.
Roughly 4.
Yeah, roughly 4.
Okay.
Roughly 4. That's excluding the stormwater management, just to be clear.
it's, I think it's like 868 square feet per dwelling unit, or somewhere in there, somewhere in the 800 range for each
Yep.
home for the parkland dedication.
With the addition of more park space, you still got more places. I see that you're actually 210 locations, where in August it was 208. So a little shift in a little bit on some of the different sizes. So some of the ones that seem to go away are the big ones. So I think it was the some of the larger spaces went away. But I think it's valuable because these lots are going to be smaller. And so people don't have the backyards, or they don't have the same kind of front yards. And so that was a little bit of the concern I had before, because likely people are going to be out and about. So now you have different locations, which I think is a real plus overall. Certainly with the intention of having affordable housing should fit into that pretty well, unless things get really crazy. But it's hard to tell what's going on. So I appreciate the changes, because I think that really opens up some connections.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, I really like this. First, I'd say thanks for working with us on the parks and increasing that space. That's great. But I really like this for the village overall, because of the wide range of price points within a small area. I think that it sets a good trend to show that those types of those size units can be in one place, or, you know, within blocks, and it's a workable plan. So I like it very much, and I look forward to seeing it go forward.
Great, thank you.
We have implemented that concept in several other neighborhoods in recent times, and it's been very successful so far
Yeah.
in doing that. Now, in earlier years, like Grandview Commons, you know, that was more segmented than what
Yes.
this is. This is a
Right.
lot more integrated.
Right.
And we've done one in Verona and one in Wanakee right now that are basically following that same model, and it's been very successful so far.
Great, great. I'm glad to hear it.
Don't think there's any other action on our part. Like everyone
that's
else,
not it.
thank you for joining us and sharing this. Welcome the project for Oregon.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
very much. Appreciate
thanks for coming down.
Yep.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6, communication and miscellaneous business. Item A was discussion of possible recommendation of the village board regarding the new park reservation system and fees, which were put together by Leanna Rhodes.
Yeah. You can just go through. Dan, I have Brian's flash drive.
Yeah, don't lose that.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good
All
night.
right. Okay, let's just go on the scroll through.
Okay. So when I began the process of putting together the system along with the fee structure, I wanted to create a system that was simple to use, accessible to everybody, paperless as possible, secure, and also hopefully could help us make a little bit of revenue. By implementing a fee structure, our facilities can then have the money to offset some of the public works labor costs, replace items when they're needed within those facilities, and hopefully contribute financially to some of the bigger future projects that we have here in the village. So to get started, the first step would be to upgrade the current reservation system we have. We're currently using a system called ActiveNet. This was chosen long before anybody that uses it daily had to use it. We're in their positions. But it's very complicated to use. It's very counterintuitive. The customer support is just, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's just not a very fluid system. In addition to the fact that it's not very comprehensive. It's, at this point, just a tool for the general public or sports organization to reach out to OSD to book the facility, and that's it. Like, they are doing everything on Google Docs, Google spreadsheets. This program really does not contribute much. I did find a newer system called RecDesk. It's incredibly easy to use. It would be a great service to the admins that need to use it daily, as well as to the customers who need to book the facilities or sports fields. RecDesk, I did a lot of research. It's the highest rated and most recommended system that's out on the market. It does come at a price of $8,300 annually, but the good news is that it comes with every feature we need and all that we could possibly need in the future, as well as it would be a point of sale system for future concession stands. And also it has a digital signage feature that we can use in the new Village Hall. And most importantly, it ticks all the boxes of those goals that I set in the very beginning. So when somebody first logs on to whichever system we're using to book a facility, the payment is due upon booking. A credit card needs to be on file, as well as a $100 check to hold on to in case of any significant damage. When doing my research and looking at the bookings for this past year, I noticed a lot of instances in which facilities were being reserved for multiple dates, or multiple facilities were being reserved, and then they would cancel at the last minute, choosing, you know, the date with the better weather, or, you know, they just wanted to hold on to it and a lot of space went to waste. So I'm hoping that half of that fee being non-refundable will help deter that from happening. However, the remaining half is refundable if the event is canceled no later than 1 week prior. And of course, this excludes acts of God, things that are just out of our control. So the fee summary is as follows. I won't go through all of it line by line, but I will go through the classifications of who books in a little bit. But I started with putting our current park shelters into a tiered system. Tier 1 would be the shelters that have all the amenities you could think of: water, electricity, bathrooms, parking, you name it, all the way down to Tier 3 park shelters, which are a reasonable way to have an event in a beautiful space. Waterman Triangle Park is just kind of in its own category under specialty shelter. It really is the focal point of our village, and it does have a bit of a larger fee than some of the other shelters, but it is an area to be respected, and hopefully the fees will make that point that it is a very special, important area to us. There's a couple of other fees that might come into play as well. One would be a temporary shelter fee. That is for those who want to erect a canopy, bouncy house, porta potty. It can do some minimal damage to grass, so that $10 fee can hopefully help Public Works fix whatever needs to be fixed. I hate to make a blanket statement, but alcohol doesn't necessarily make people more calm or, rational. So there is a small fee for events that are serving alcohol. That's just to help cover, any damage that might be done, any broken glass, any, extra waste that could be accrued. And then there is the option to rent additional products as well if you need a little bit more. So I went through the 2022 bookings, and based on those, if we had had the system in place, conservatively, we would have brought in a little over $4,500. I say conservatively because I had no way of knowing if they were resident booking or non-resident bookings. So I just assumed they were all resident, just to give a more conservative number.
Leanne?
Yes.
Is that just for the shelters? That this doesn't even start with sports fields?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So a summary of those classifications that you saw before for booking parties. So resident and non-resident is pretty self-explanatory, except I do want to note that someone with a Fitchburg or Brooklyn address, even if they are within the OSD limits, they would still be considered a non-resident, simply because Fitchburg and Brooklyn don't extend that courtesy to us. So I am willing to.
And they don't pay taxes.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So the biggest difference would be, the community organizations. There's sanctioned and non-sanctioned. So right now, in general terms, sanctioned community organizations are those who, it might hinder them financially to have to pay some of these fees, as well as instances where basically the village would be paying itself. Non-sanctioned community organizations are those within the community that we want to support, give them a reduced rate, but are able to pay such fees. A non-sanctioned organization does have the opportunity to apply to become a sanctioned organization. Or if we evaluate at the end of the year and see that a sanctioned organization is taking up about 90% of our shelter space and not paying anything, then we can reevaluate at that time. So once again, at the end of the year, the status of sanctioned versus non-sanctioned can be determined, and it can change.
Can I make one change to one of the names?
Yes.
Friends of Anderson Park. It's actually Anderson Park Friends Incorporated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of those where we paid for that name. We kind of want to use it just to make sure it's
Absolutely.
official. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Okay. So where do these fees put us in comparison to the surrounding communities? So it starts up at the top, and Nona and Fitchburg have very high shelter fee, or shelter reservation fees. As you can see, Oregon is just slightly below the middle and puts us right on par with DeForest and Deerfield.
You didn't do Stoughton's?
I did do Stoughton's, but theirs was structured hourly. So as much as I tried to do the math, I wanted to compare apples to apples rather than, and there was another community too that their shelters just didn't compare to ours, so and I forget which one it was, but these were the ones where I was able to do the math and compare where we would fall.
The only reason I ask is because those are the people that usually use our shelters here.
Oh, okay.
It's Stoughton, a lot of Stoughton residents use Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I was just curious.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, so here's where things can get a tad on the tricky side. So for our sports facilities, for diamonds, fields, and courts, at this point, they have not been paying any fees, or if they have, they've been pretty minimal. So I don't want to slap them with a huge fee right away, so to help kind of transition, I'm proposing a flat fee for each organization, just a fee of $25 per team in their league. This would cover games, this would cover practices, and I used the Oregon Soccer Club as an example. So this is just kind of their numbers that they had for 2021, I believe. So if their numbers remain the same, it would be about $4,500 for the year. They are able to split that up per season to $2,250. But then going forward into January 2024, community sports organizations will have the following structure fee. A flat $25 unlimited practice fee, which sounds very small, but it's pretty common when you look at the surrounding areas. That's typically what they are being charged. As far as games go, it's $10 for a half day per field and $25 per field for the full day. And then even though, again, those numbers sound pretty minimal, it does add up to be quite a bit. Also, there's no price comparison because compared to surrounding communities, these are very low numbers. So they hopefully will be okay with that. Pickleball being its own entity, the Oregon Pickleball Club and Friends of the Oregon Pickleball Club, they pay their own fees, and that grants them access to designated courts at designated times. And then there is times when the courts are available to anybody who would like, and they are able to reserve those for either $5 an hour if you live in Oregon, or $10 for an hour if you do not live in Oregon. And these are comparable to the Capital Area Pickleball Club if you go on their website and see what the other courts in the area charge, and it's the same.
Can I ask a question about that quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So does that mean if I want to go play pickleball, I need to reserve the court, or I can walk up and play and run the risk that it's reserved? I guess the question I'm asking is, do I have to pay to play? Or do I just have to pay to make sure I have a spot to play, or walk up and show my reservation and say, hey, I have this court reserved,
Right.
would you please move on?
So the ultimate goal is to have the reservation system be, let's say the club has it Mondays 8 to 11. So you would only have the option to reserve it from 11 to 4 when they are not using it. So yes, you would pay to play unless you are a member of the, yes, thank you, Mike. He explains this a lot better than I
Because
can.
we met this afternoon
Yes.
when I saw this, and one of the things as a pickleball organization, we want to keep access to the community to play. And so what we talk about is right now, we have what we call community play, Sunday through Friday mornings from 8 to 11, and then on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 5 o'clock until dark. And that's open to the community, family, friends, the whole 9 yards. Everybody comes, there's no charge for that. What we have around that is the open play, and what Leanne and I talked about today was making sure that the community has access to open play. If we wanted to reserve a court, we could reserve no more than 50% of the courts during open play, and the other 3 courts, or there's 6 courts, the other 3 courts would remain open, so you can walk up with your family and play. And that way, there's always access to the community all the time without a fee structure. The feedback I was getting from the pickleball community is, look, these are in a public park, you know, we have courts there, we pay taxes, you know, we want to be able to come and go and play. But with a reservation system, it's a little bit different animal, that we want to keep access to the public, but still people would like to reserve a court at certain times so they can play with a designated group of people. So I think what we talked about today is a pretty good compromise of making sure the community is available to play and walk in at any particular time.
So if Andy and I want to play, and all we have to do is go on the system, and we can reserve it right there and then walk down to the park and play? Will it go that fast that it'll be out there?
I believe so. Also, I mean, maybe we could toy around with the idea of when you go to make a reservation, there could be, you know, the schedule for the pickleball club or the Friends of the Pickleball Club saying, hey, there's open play at, or group play at, sorry, I'm still learning my pickleball terminology, you know, from 8 to 11. So if you just want to try it out without necessarily paying a court reservation fee, you do have that option as well. So my goal would be to kind of marry the 2 schedules so that you can see, hey, you know what, I would like to drop in at this time and just give it a try before I commit to reserving a whole court.
There may be some confusion because we don't have a formal pickleball club. I've stated this in front of the group before. And so Leanne put this together before we actually talked. And we don't have a club, so we're not going to be reserving courts as a club. The courts are reserved through community ed and rec right now for community play. And that's a big distinction here. And that is open to everybody. And Judy, you want to walk in during that time, you walk in with your family and we play. All the other times around that, unless it's a community-sponsored event, all the other times are open for play that you can walk on. All we're saying is that with a court reservation system, during that open play, a resident would have the ability to reserve a court, up to 3 courts for that 2-hour block. And there's always going to be 50% of the courts available to walk up and play.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if I just want to go play anytime, whether it's in that time window or not, I can walk up and play, and I shouldn't have to pay anything. But if I want to walk up and say I want to make sure I have a space to play, that's where I would pay the $5. So it's a gamble. So it's not necessarily I have to pay every single time I want to use this public park that I already paid for. But it's if I want to guarantee that I'm going to have a space to be, that's why I would reserve it.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
It's a good summary.
Yes, and thank goodness for Mike.
Well, and also, if you're going to have tournaments and stuff, you'll want to reserve that, so people know up
Absolutely.
front that the
Right,
tournaments are
that's
happening.
when it becomes a village-sponsored event, and that's a little bit different if we did that, or if we did a village-sponsored clinic, or a youth camp, or something like that.
Right.
That's a little different, but for the most part, no, there's gonna be open play there for the community.
Okay.
So Mike, when you're talking community use, are you talking Oregon community use, or are you being generous and saying community use as in, hello, Stoughton, Verona, people like that?
Well, it's a broad-based term, because I don't know how we would police that. So yes, it's open to the public. I guess that's a better way of putting that, yes.
Okay.
So how do we make money on that, then, if we are just having it open all the time?
Well, your group pays, right?
No.
Oh, you don't?
Nope, nobody pays.
We don't have a formal group, we don't pay. The only time we would pay is if I wanted to reserve a court, and I would pay into the system to reserve a court.
Go ahead, Judy, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. I just want to know if,
Well, I'm trying to figure out what,
because we're going to have them come back on us and say, well, I got to pay for the soccer. How come I don't have to pay for,
that's where I'm going.
okay.
I don't really understand the scenario where anybody ever pays, except that if Andy and his friend wants to reserve the court, they were the only ones that are ever gonna pay to use the pickleball courts. Yet, your group is using the court for 3 hours, 4 days a week and a couple of nights.
But it's not my group, Bill, it's the community.
I see. And do
So it's pickleball players, and it's designated community play time, and everybody's welcome. The only thing we're saying during that designation is nobody can reserve a court.
Okay, I got it.
That's all we're saying.
I got it.
But we just want to make sure it's fair, that's all. 'Cause
Yeah,
if-
no, I have to agree, that doesn't sound like, that's gonna be a big revenue generator. But it is what it is.
This is also just,
Because there's no, I mean, the other ones clearly are gonna generate revenue because they have much larger groups and they're organized clubs, and it's a different thing. So, I understand it, and thank you for
What's going
talking
on
us
with
through
this?
that.
yeah, I would also just clarify, this is obviously a first kind of attempt
Yeah.
at,
Sure.
trying to put some numbers on and, meeting with some of these clubs and understanding what their use looks like, what's open or not, so we're
Yeah.
not necessarily saying that all of this would be set in stone, but this is
So when it
just
says
a
$5 an
comparison.
hour, is that Andy and I both can play? Or $5 per person?
Correct,
Or-
so it's per court.
Per
Per
court.
court, okay. So don't you guys collect now?
No, because you're running it through Community Ed, correct? Are you running it through Community Ed or through the school district? Yeah. So it's a program through Community Ed, which is why there are no fees, where you guys just happen to be playing consistently through the Community Ed because that's how it works out, okay?
But indoors they charge, is that right? They charge like
Indoors, there's a drop-in fee, yes, you are correct, Judy. And I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know where the money goes. You can buy a punch card, and it's 10 plays or 5 plays for a certain amount of money, or there's a drop-in fee of $5. But outdoors, there's no charge at all. And I assume that money goes to the school for the lights, the heat, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing, but I honestly don't know.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is it, because they pay $5 a person for a drop-in fee, or with a punch card or
And
whatever.
that's a school facility,
And that's
so
only
treated-
inside the school then?
Yeah.
It's inside.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how it all, so it's,
all
to
structured.
have too many different things.
Absolutely.
I'd also say probably pickleball use has less wear and tear on the facilities than, a game, dozens of kids playing football or something like that. That's, mowing, more maintenance for public works versus pickleball is a little bit more of a less intense use, so. But again, it's a work in progress, I think,
Yes.
as we're kind
Very
of, this is just your attempt to
I'm just trying to
compare
be
against
fair,
what we're
'cause,
No, I
doing.
completely
you
agree.
know,
Yep.
because I mean, I would play pickleball more than I'd use the other fields. But I'm just trying to see, if we're gonna charge, and that's what Mark and I have been talking about, is having a fee for the fields and stuff. But I'm just trying to see how we can be fair, is all.
Absolutely.
I think the difference with us is the other organizations are a formalized organization. Pickleball is not. There's no formal organization. We don't intend to have a formal organization. And I would turn the question around the other way. If, let's say, me and my friends wanted to go play some baseball, if the leagues are not out there playing, would you charge me a fee to go use the ball diamonds? If they were just wide open? And it's the same kind of thing. Anybody can go play pickleball at any time that there's not an organized event going on.
I mean, I don't know, sometimes I think we get carried away with some of these fees because we're not gonna put a gate at the top of every slide and charge a kid a quarter to go down a slide. Because at some point, these things are all in community parks. So, maybe this part might be a moot point, but I think it's, to that point we made earlier, it's if you just wanna guarantee you have a spot to play,
Yeah.
that's why you would reserve it. If you're gonna go have a picnic at a park with a shelter, you wanna reserve that.
Right.
But if I'm gonna walk down the street to Bethel Greenacre and I wanna sit in the shelter, I don't have to charge it, just if someone else wants.
That is correct.
I mean, I guess that's the point we're making
I like
here,
it that you
so.
can go on and find out if somebody's at the park,
Yeah, so.
so you can figure that out too.
And I would add that I think that when I'm talking to residents, that I'm sure are gonna ask me about this, is I'm gonna stress the word reservation system. In other words, you can use the facilities if there's no one there.
Absolutely,
But
yes.
if you want to reserve, then there's a fee involved.
Correct.
And I think that's a good
Absolutely.
way to.
I agree.
Very true.
Yeah.
So you're taking your chances going there because it might be reserved. so-
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if you
Okay.
want to have a party or something, then you need to step up. But go ahead, Leanne.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
so-
that's
sorry to
absolutely
hijack that
fine.
aspect.
No, don't worry about it. All right. Okay, so moving forward with the system, So once we have everything kind of set the way we would like it to, we have all the approval and consent that we need. My first order of business would be to purchase the booking system. And then I would be in touch with the staff and organizations that would be using it the most frequently and inform them of, hey, here's what's going on, this is how things are gonna be working from now on. I would also like to have, I've been meeting with OSD quite a bit, but I'd like to meet with them one time just so that we can sit in a room and almost have sort of a draft system, just create some sort of jurisdictions. Not that we're not willing to work together, but I would like for the organizations to know who their point person is. If pickleball has a question, they know to go to Alex, for example. Soccer club is a question, they know to go to me. So just to establish that and hopefully, you know, help with some of the jumble around. And then also just get the new system ready for usage. Put in all the facilities, put in all the teams, put in all the data that we need to. And then at the beginning of the year, we could post all this new information on the village website. And the books would then be open to priority organizations. So a lot of those are the organizations listed in the classification page. So I would reach out to them and say, hey, the books for 2023 are open. You know, do you have your dates for National Night Out, for Summerfest, for your annual events? And get those on the books before February, when we would open them to the general public.
Where do the sports teams fall in there?
So they are, in my opinion, one of the priority organizations, just because it is a lot of moving parts. So I would like to have that month buffer to get those scheduled before the general public can then come in and.
See, I'm really conflicted on that.
Okay.
One of my thing would be, I understand why. I'm going to ask the question
Right.
why, and I'm going to understand. I'll get the big long explanation. But looking through the 2018 plan, everything, all these parks are classified as community parks.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of all these parks have been paid for by the community members. You know, if you look at the, you know, $4.5 million spent at J.C. Park, the extra $2.5 million that'll come, it's a $7 million project. I'm not trying to belittle softball's $20,000 donation or their baseball
Right.
$60,000 donation, but it's such a small fraction of what the project would be. And I get that you would want to schedule all these because you could run the risk of someone coming in and go, well, you know, the Fall Fury is this usually this weekend. I'm going to come in and drop $2,000 to reserve all the fields just because I can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would hope people wouldn't do that. But it's one of those things where I've always struggled with, you know, J.C. Park because it's a park that I will never use. I don't play these sports. I might play pickleball, but you know, if I want to go reserve the all-purpose sports field to fly kites, or even all the baseball fields to have a kite festival one day. Like I said, I struggle with the, hey, it's a community park, but there's sports fields here. I get that aspect of it, but I have a hard time with the priority aspect of it, and I guess that's just my feelings on it. I'm sure other people have their own feelings with it. Well, one of the other questions, I had two other questions with this. One, are there going to be rest days for these fields to recover built into the schedule?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have spoken with Jeff Rao and he gave me a schedule of rest
Perfect.
days for specific fields.
And then this is more general, but where do these fees go? Are they going to go to like a general village fund? Are they going to go into like parks budget? Are they going to go into develop other things? Obviously, there's going to be that cost to pay, you know, for the reservations. You know, the hope is you make enough money
Absolutely.
to cover the cost of that, but I think it's going to be a lot more streamlined with
And
it.
also, we have to pay her salary.
Yeah,
so that's-
right.
That's the other,
Yep.
I mean, think about it.
No, I'm just curious where, you know, where this money then gets dumped into, what bucket?
I think ideally, it would be kind of divvied up between Public Works for their efforts and Osaka.
If I recall, what I've seen Martin doing is that he's identified and put in a park segment into the budget overall.
Mhm.
And so he's throwing some of the costs on
Sure.
the overall J.C. Park. And so I think there's more of it to go into that. You know, part of this is that we really didn't have any organization before, so we really couldn't offer anything like a shelter or like a handout of some sport activity type of thing. And that's really what the community should offer, so that you can have something. If you wanted a volleyball net or something, you're going to reserve a spot, you can have some of that. So it's a little upside down, and then we really are, the anticipated revenue isn't going to cover annual cost, which is it's a different question. But that's what I have seen from the budget, is that Martin seems to be putting it into that category so
Sure.
we can actually focus on it, because I do think we have a lot of park improvements that we can make. We just don't have any dollars associated
Yeah.
with it. So it looks like he's trying to put some of that into that area.
Yeah, I would imagine it would kind of be its own line item initially under parks. It's just reservation fee revenue.
Sure.
And then ultimately would kind of get divided out into what amount of that goes to salary, what amount goes to the maintenance fees. It might just, again, initially cover the cost of the system itself, but the system can be used for other things too. If
Sure.
it's for village hall signage, or can be tied to, other departments, then maybe that fee can kind of get broken up too, and isn't
Sure.
just the burden of the parks to kind of sustain themselves.
So looking at Andy's comment, so if somebody comes in, well, let's use, I'm going to pick on soccer, like, which I shouldn't, but, so they reserve all of these fields for a cheap rate, and so nobody else can use them. How do you, what if Andy wants to have his kite thing? Can he ask them to, what, if the fields are not being used, but they're, because when they have their tournaments, and they do charge all of their people for being in soccer, is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so indirectly, the kids are paying anyway. I'm just trying to figure out, do you kind of watch, are you gonna watch the fields so they're not reserved all the time? Or, you know where I'm going,
Yeah.
Dave, right?
Yes, I do, and I do plan on, especially with this being a brand new system, evaluating as much as possible, because there are a couple components that I kind of struggled with. How do I enforce a tournament fee? A lot of communities have a tournament fee versus a games fee, but then when I went through the 2022 bookings, I thought, okay, they're booked exactly the same way. I don't know how to differentiate. So I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error and maybe some growing pains. But I do plan on, if one organization is monopolizing our space, then, we may have to have a discussion of maybe they need to fundraise for their own private facility, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
Nope.
Elise. Yeah.
Sorry, just jump on that too. That's been our concern in the past when we haven't had these reservation fees, and what Leanne was kind of describing is, in the past there had been not actually really, I think, from the sports organizations as much as some private individuals that, I want to have a baby shower, I'm not sure where I want to have it or which day, and so I'm going to book a bunch of days and end up not using all of those. That hasn't happened as much in recent years with the sports organizations. They've actually worked really well together, especially some of the groups that kind of use our multi-use rectangular fields, so lacrosse, rugby, football, soccer. They've actually worked behind the scenes internally to kind of talk about, these are the fields that we think we need to use this year. These are the days of the week. Girls lacrosse is typically Thursday nights or whatever. And so when they came to this Google Doc system that Alex Marks helped us organize this earlier last year, they had already kind of worked out there were a few conflicts, and I think they were conscious of the fact that we're sharing this space with other people. Obviously this year and next year are going to be a bit of a crunch because those JC Park fields are unavailable. We're waiting for the grass to kind of get established next year. So those are fewer spaces that are available right now until that park kind of grows in. So I think that's kind of the advantage of having some of these organizations put in their requests right away. It's not that they're guaranteed to be approved, and there's obviously some things that might be conflicts, or the village is going to prioritize making sure that Summerfest is has the space that it needs, National Night Out and things like that. And then beyond that, it's okay, what are these events? I mean, part of the reason, a big part of the reason that the village put so much money into JC Park is the fact that we'll have facilities to host tournaments now, which puts money into our hotel, brings money to our businesses, brings people to town. Not to say that, community events can't do that too. But I get what you're saying, Andy, too. It's like, you as a resident, you feel like you should have just as much access
Right. Yeah.
when another group would be. And, I guess that's something we could look at too, is what does it look like if we open the books, January 15th,
Yeah.
everybody puts in their requests, and maybe some of the organizations, they are a little bit more organized. They're going to get their request in sooner, but also, hey, I want to have my kid's 5th birthday party. I know it's going to be this day, and
Sure.
as conflicts arise,
Yeah, I mean,
it's first come, first serve.
Your kid's not old enough for this yet, but if anyone who has school-age kids that have done summer school registration through, the 30 seconds of stress.
Bloodthirst.
Yeah, of signing, that's why I'm curious to see how stressful this is, or if it's not just these spots fill up, or instead of saying put your reservations in, put your requests for reservations in, because that way if there's conflicts, then you can go through there, and it's not softball coming in and going, well, we're going to reserve all the ball fields, and then baseball can suck up to us, and then we'll sell them the whatever. I mean, I could see it going south really fast.
Right.
But the hope is everybody's good about it too. But I guess my point, going back to the original one, is I just want it to be equitable. And it's especially if it was a sports complex, then I would say fine. That's what it is, and you don't have anything else there, but. There's not a lot of places you could say you can go fly a kite in Bethel Greenacre, but there's 40-foot tall trees around that whole park, so you don't get wind. The same with Stone Ridge. So going to J.C. Park with the absence of most of the trees now, that might be the best place to do it. So that I guess that's why I'm looking at these other spaces that you can use these fields. Yes, there's a fence around it, but that shouldn't limit you with what you can do inside that fence around those properties.
Absolutely.
And I guess I want the community to understand that, that they'd be welcome to use this park, outside of, the time that it's reserved. I mean, if I want to have a picnic and I'm going to go put a blanket up in the outfield, as long as the park's not being used or the ball field's not being used, I should not get dirty looks by doing so, because it's going to be a nice maintained grass to go do so.
Yeah. I think there'll be a big, once J.C. Park is kind of operating and those fields can be used, I think we'll definitely do a big education outreach piece, as well as, a big ribbon cutting too, so make sure everybody understands that this is available to be used by the public, because they're the ones that really are funding the vast majority of it too. And right in the center of our
I really
community.
don't think that you need to stress as much as you are right now over the youth groups using these fields.
Okay.
They have never caused a problem.
Right,
They always
it's
work
gone
with
very
each other to get
smoothly,
it
and,
done. The baseball has their same weekends, they use their tournament, the softball does, the soccer does. They have worked together for years to make all this work. They used to come here before us and present their weekends and everything. Everybody was like, go for it, make it work. And they always do. So I don't think you gotta worry about that changing. None of them ever go in and request 500 fields on one weekend because they want no one else to use them. They just don't do that. They never have done that. So that's not, I don't think you got to worry about that being an issue.
We just want more tournaments because we want to bring people into town.
Well, the thing
absolutely.
you're going to have to be concerned about is once this opens, when you start talking, I mean, I have notes all over the place, but I'm not going to go there right now. But the problem, once these fields are created and that park's open, you're going to get club baseball teams and softball teams are going to want to reserve that facility.
Absolutely.
Because they can't, they're independent clubs all over. They don't have a general area they play in. They host tournaments to raise money for themselves, and they find parks that people let them use.
Okay.
You go out to the forest, they use them all the time. They'll use them in Verona. That's how they get their places. They go all over and they find where they can find fields to play on a weekend. So that's the hardest part. That's where you got to just, you have to figure out who's your local people and who's your outside people, which is a very pretty simple thing to do when you come to clubs and stuff like that. But if I may, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions just so I can figure this out. You're comparing what the school district is using now for reservation system for
Correct.
facilities?
Correct.
When you looked at this? Okay.
Yes, so if we do not purchase RecDesk, ActiveNet, the system that they're using would be the one that by default we would have to use. And I really don't want it to come to
Yeah,
that.
so, right. So a while ago, when this, I don't know how long ago this was now, but
Right.
I think between the school and
Mhm.
village, it was, when this park started coming about, they're trying to figure out exactly what you're doing. Are you gonna go your own way or stay
Right.
with what's there now? And this active is something that's been new since 3 or 4 years ago it came into the district. But it's not, I will tell you this, the system itself, the whole package that we have
Mhm.
is completely underutilized
Mhm.
to what's being used. It's,
Got it.
there's
Okay.
tons of things it can do that it's not even being touched upon. And I think it's because the district itself doesn't have all that stuff it needs. I mean, it's there, it's part of the package, but, so it is something that if this rec desk doesn't work, you could look at that. I think it's, I'm not gonna tell you it's not cumbersome, but, I use it every day. It can be used. It's not that bad, but, there are parts to it, yes. But, this might go back to Mike, so I apologize again, Mike, for bringing you into this, but, so, the one thing that we used to talk about, this goes back years on this board, and Judy might remember this too, but, like a couple of things, like in the tier 2 park shelters, the pickleball things. If somebody comes from Madison and wants to reserve our shelter,
Mhm.
right? And that's what we used to get a lot of, because in Madison, it's gonna cost them $250 an hour to reserve a shelter. So they used to come here and pay $25. That's, I'll drive 10 minutes to get that deal.
Right.
So a lot of the time, what we used to, we're looking at, and then it kind of fell until all this, but, I think one thing you gotta look at is either, like, and the tier 2 is the easiest example I can give you. So we're charging residents in Oregon $40 a day, but somebody can come from Madison for $20 more.
Yeah, see, I don't think that's right
I
either.
think either we gotta look at the Oregon residents and say, pay us $10. You live here,
Okay.
you pay taxes
Right.
here, you do everything else, your kids go to school here. Or take our non-residents and put them at $150 and make them pay more money. Because right now, $20 a difference from our community member to our outside community
Right.
member, it's kind of like, well, boy, I don't know which one's getting, I'd say the Oregon resident's not getting a very good deal if they're only paying 60. So I would just say that's something to look at.
Absolutely. No, that's a very good point.
I mean, and, to charge an Oregon resident $40 to have a shelter at Kaiser because they have a baby shower or whatever,
Right.
like Elise said, what, if they're paying us 10, 15, $20 or whatever we feel covers the cleanup after it's over. I wish they clean up their own stuff, quite honestly, but that's a whole other situation, but, so that's just something I think to look at. The only other thing I would say, when up in your soccer or your Diamonds Fields courts, that thing
Yes.
where you have it broke apart, and I'd be happy to work with you or whoever else, but
That would be great.
I think the one thing you might want to do instead of, your idea of, like the $25 a day, or the $10, 4 hours, I don't, if I have my glasses on, I probably read it, as they're sitting here in my hand. You might want to look at, or we may want to look at something more, breaking apart how much these youth sport groups or whoever else uses these things, and look at a flat fee each year. Because this whole thing that you're looking at here, when you start looking soccer, baseball, softball, whoever else might come through here, you are gonna have one heck of a headache trying to figure out all that stuff out. So I think it's just something to look at, that you might make more sense to come up with some type of flat fee that they're gonna pay at the beginning of every year, and
Right.
wherever if that goes to the parks, whatever it does. But I just think that's gonna be an awful lot of work for you to try to keep all that kind of together without causing yourself a major headache.
Right. That is a very good point.
So Dave, you're saying, just use history as the example of, okay, they've used the fields this much in the last couple of years, structure it somehow that way. I mean, I think it would make, it seems to
Yeah,
make
I'm
it
gonna-
easy.
I don't think you're gonna have I don't think if you go back 10 years and just work your way forward, I think the youth groups, their numbers they've been going up, but I don't think they use that much more of it. I think
Sure.
it's pretty consistent on what they have throughout the year, whether it's practice, games at night, games whenever they play their games and stuff like that. I think it'd be pretty consistent. I don't-
Sure. No, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think you can, like softball, there's no way you can look at softball and say, pay us, I'm just picking a number here, pay us $3,000 because they're not using the fields here like the youth baseball group is doing.
Right.
They have a lot more teams, they have a lot more kids. So it would be probably unfair to tell them to pay the same much. But I think you could break it apart by the percentage of the time those people are on the fields, if you looked at it that way, but, so.
Or kind of like she has it set up for 2023, maybe it's based on the size of the organization or the size of your membership or number of teams or something like that, and it's revisited on an annual basis based on
Absolutely.
last year's
Softball,
data or
depending-
something.
Depending on what happens, softball could have 200 kids, but baseball could have 650. Soccer has over 1,000. So I'm not saying necessarily that there's 1,000 kids there, let's make sure they pay for that, but if they're using the fields, I don't know, say 70% of the time,
Right.
then figure out whatever that might be instead of busting it all apart individually.
Absolutely, that's a very good point.
How is there any verification that you have that spot reserved? So if you go to a spot that somebody's happens to be on land, how do you know?
So they would get an email confirmation, that would also act as their receipt for payment. And their best bet would be to just print it out and bring it with them if they, do need to have somebody move. Otherwise, the other option is Rec Desk does have a comprehensive calendar. So I don't know if they can pull it up on their phone and say, hey, I have this reserved. We also might look into the possibility of signage. I know Fitchburg, for example, when you reserve their shelter, there's a little sign that says reserved for the Smith party or something similar. So
Right.
that might be something we look into as well.
Have to deal with that as you go forward. Because some cases like basketball and other things like Gassner and Bethel, some groups just play basketball.
Right.
So if you come up to that and trying to intimidate a bunch of guys that shoot the basketball and say, here, I got a
Here's my
baby
paper.
shower.
Yeah.
Right.
So if I'm just sitting at home and I decide, get a group together and go over there,
Yeah.
I can find it on here?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this calendar will be there if it's reserved or
Absolutely.
not?
Yep, all you have to do is just create a Rec Desk account, but it doesn't cost anything, yeah.
Just gotta put in a credit card, so the credit card's there.
Yep.
Okay.
I suppose we could also talk about too, maybe there's some facilities that don't need to be on the system and should be open at all times and non-reservable. So if you want to play a pickup game of basketball, there's not really, if there's a youth basketball or some kind of organized event, probably not happening at one of our community parks at the kind of beat up basketball courts or something. So maybe some of those things, it's just, we leave it as is and it's just come and go. And obviously, you're not charging kids to, I have my reservation to go down the slide. You can't go down the slide. We're not going to get into that. So,
I mean,
yeah,
it's one of those things where I think we're almost overthinking some of this. I mean, because obviously, there's a big investment from the village on Chasey Park. There's going to be big investments elsewhere, but it's just one of those things where you can't charge people for some of this stuff.
Right.
So, just using our heads.
Yep.
And again, we go back to the village, our residents.
Right.
I mean, but if we got the other people that come from everywhere else, that's,
yeah, they can pay into it.
So comparing Rec Desk to other programs you looked at, how did that compare? How does the pricing vary? $8,300 for an annual subscription to me is a pretty solid number compared to a lot of other commercial software that I've looked at.
So a lot of the systems that I compared it to get the pricing structure that would compare to what we would be using Rec Desk for, you had to get a specialized quote, and it was per administrator, per it was, but it varied quite a bit.
Yeah, they vary
yes.
also. They make
Whereas-
it creative.
Yes, whereas a Rec Desk was, I even spoke with somebody personally and said, okay, can I get a more personalized quote? This is what our needs are. This is what our village population is. And they said, no, the 8,300 is, right about where it is. Because then I asked, okay, is the point of sale extras, the digital signage extra? There's also the possibility of using it as like a volunteer system. And they said, no, that's all included. So, yeah, I didn't look into the pricing very much on many other systems, because again, when I went with, okay, these are the goals I'm trying to meet, a lot of them just they would be great for a year, but wouldn't be great for moving forward.
So when you're saying point of sale, are you saying that I won't have to pay more if I use a credit card, nor will the village get charged?
Correct. The village will not, for credit card transactions, as well as, they prioritized, credit card transaction security a lot more than a lot of the other software systems.
But it won't ask me for $5 more or another $1 more?
Correct. And same
That's
with, it
that's
won't give
worth
the
it then,
village
yeah.
a fee either. Correct.
And point of sale could also be like concession stand, that's the actual
Yeah.
system. When I'm buying a bag of chips,
Mhm.
I
With
can
debit card.
swipe my card and
Yeah,
$2
that's
and
worth it then,
everything.
yeah. Point of sale is big, because it's at least 2.75. I mean, I just renewed my real estate license and I had to pay $5 because it goes through US Bank and you gotta pay that.
Somebody's gotta pay.
Yeah, somebody's gotta pay. So I mean, the point of sale right there is going to save money.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you're familiar, but it's the Clover point of sale system, which is, again, a very highly rated,
Secure.
correct
Mhm.
system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say just on the cost, we did present this in the village budget last night, this $8,300 line item, and there is space for it. We've gotten a really good deal with the school district and specifically Deb for a long time doing a lot of this work. So we kind of got off a really good deal for a long time. And obviously, Alex in the community ed office this year helping us out too. They've allowed us to kind of use and have our facilities in ActiveNet. I think Leanne's had some discussions about, if we do go with RecDesk, I know the school district is locked into their ActiveNet contract for a couple of years, but there's potential in the future that they could actually, join up with RecDesk if we still have that, and we could potentially split that cost with them.
I'm hoping it's easier because when I was at the chamber, I did all the VFW signups, so I used all of that stuff. People would come in because they couldn't get into the system, and I did all their stuff for them. If it wasn't me, it was
Super
them.
intuitive, I think.
Yeah. So I'm hoping this will be easy.
Yes.
Phil?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's the method for verifying resident versus non-resident, or strictly declaration?
Address.
That's something that I was going to play around with the software. A couple of ideas I had would be the zip code verification for their credit card, as well as just a mailing address, like a non-PO box address. I think I put in the classification that it had to be a physical residence.
So there'll be at least one trip of some kind. They can't just say yes or no, which
Correct,
is good.
yes, yeah.
Have you done any projections once it's up and running, what kind of income there might be? Or is it too soon for that?
I did, it's a little bit too soon.
Well, that's
so-
fine. I'm just
No,
curious.
that's totally fine. So, what I have is what Alex gave me, and this is from 2022.
Okay.
So, when I first started the process, I went through field by field. I tried to go through, there's like a color coding system I tried to get percentage of usage, but then again, there were just things I couldn't verify. Was this a tournament? Was this a practice? Was,
Right.
So I did just kind of use the most educated guess I could on some of these numbers. But I did so when I did the going forward fees for the sports fields, they're pretty comparable to fields in the area, and I thought, gosh, that sounds so low. But when doing the math, I think looking at the 2022 numbers, I just went through, I think it was the soccer club's games. And if this fee structure, the 2024 fee structure were in place, I think it ended up being like over $8,000 just for their game field usage.
Okay. That
So
could be
it adds up, even though it sounds, pretty minimal.
Right.
My only comment would be, I think you have the out-of-town non-residents too cheap for the
Yeah.
Shelters.
Okay.
That's the only comment I got on that.
Absolutely.
Phil?
I had one more. All the sports groups, teams, whatever you might, they're all aware of this upcoming? Is that
Yeah, that was gonna be my question
Yeah.
too.
Just got this,
Yeah.
this last weekend, so I don't think they know.
So, that I don't know.
so-
That,
I guess I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Good
one of those
comment.
sooner the better things.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do, as soon as the system is purchased, I believe my next step was just to maybe write a letter or email or
I would
however
just-
and just say,
I
hey, this
just,
is.
if nothing else, just, we're in the process of setting up a fee system, and it will be implemented next
Absolutely.
year.
Yes.
I do it
Reference-
now.
Reference this, you need to do it
Yeah,
now.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I can tell you they do not know.
Okay.
They have no clue.
No.
So I would,
I
you
didn't
know,
think so, but
and, and
yeah.
you're starting, you planning on starting the fees, start fees when do we start?
January 1st would be my,
I'd send that letter tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too.
I agree.
okay.
I think like to Phil's point, I mean, as much notice as you can give them, even if you don't have all the nuts and bolts, just say, hey,
Yeah.
this is what
Right.
we're doing, this is why we're doing it.
Mhm.
And then, if you can list off a handful of this, here's the benefits of us charging you a fee now
Right.
and this and,
Yeah, but it'd be good timing, because
Yeah.
if you wanna do it January 1st,
right,
you're giving them,
Absolutely.
you know,
Mhm.
They need to have an audience.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
need to be heard.
Right.
They definitely do.
Absolutely.
And my guess is they're gonna wanna sit right there and ask us why
Yeah.
this is happening.
Yep.
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
So.
Well, and invite them
And I
in
would welcome
December.
them,
Invite
yeah.
them to come if they
I'm-
want.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
One organization I'd like to point out is at least the Scouts, Cub Scouts,
Yes.
Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. So that's one that is not in there, and I don't know if there's other
Oh,
ones, but like I
that,
said.
I think it would depend on their finances, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't believe them to have money to burn, shall we say. But for, them just to hold a meeting of, 10 Cub Scouts at Kaiser Park on a Saturday, when that could be used for, possibly more lucrative, I don't know. I did give the Scouts some thought, and they kind of fell into that gray area where I wasn't quite sure what to do. So it might be just.
Okay, Mark, you're the scoutmaster. What are you thinking? Because when they raise money, they use it to go camping.
Correct, it's outing activities.
outing
and so
activities,
oftentimes
yeah.
We don't want the kids to be in school. We want them to be outside. And so
Right.
oftentimes you do
Mhm.
activities out
Mhm.
in the space. And so Friends of Anderson Park have been awesome for the Boy Scouts.
Wait,
But the
what
Cub
is
Anderson
that?
Park Friends.
Hold on, yeah.
I do it both ways.
I'm not familiar with that.
Um,
And so therefore, there's quite often that they'll do things in the village because they're in the village and there's different organizations, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
To something you just said though, I guess what is the whole purpose of a community park? Is it to service the community members, which they're the Scouts would be, or is it to make money? Because when you say, I'm not trying to pick on you, but when you say something like, well, I don't know if I want the Scouts there when I could be making money by renting it out to someone else. I mean, it was probably just, that's
Right.
not, I
know
again.
exactly what you mean.
But I understand her point of view too.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
No, of course,
But that's why, the Scouts, again, okay, non-sanctioned organizations have the opportunity to apply to become a sanctioned
Exactly.
organization. So
Absolutely. Yep.
there's room for that gray area, and that's not a
Absolutely.
discussion that would have to get fully fleshed out now. But I think there are those groups in the community that, will be moving around.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I would just add that, Mark was able to mention the Boy Scouts. There's probably others that
Absolutely.
are gonna fit into this, but I also agree 100% that they need to come forward and ask for that.
Right.
Otherwise,
Mhm.
we'll have, everyone's claiming, well,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
property, and we can't have that either.
Mhm.
You have your own organization you want to put in?
I might make them up with one, but it does remind me of my next point. And that is, sanctioned organizations probably should be told in letter format or otherwise that, and I'll use myself as an example,
Mhm.
I am on the village board, so I think I'll reserve that for the village so that I can have my wife's birthday party there.
I see.
So, and I
Mhm.
think
I see
there-
what you're saying.
So I just think it's a good idea to say, to notify these people that they're part of this group or anybody new. But here's the parameters, and that is
Right.
it's for your group, not individual members of your group.
Absolutely.
Because that'll happen.
Oh, absolutely.
So the
Mark, are
village
you
can
gonna
come to your
do
birthday
that?
party.
Well, that's right. Coming up.
Any further discussion on this? Leanne, thank you
Do
very
we-
much for your
Yeah,
work.
thank
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. A lot of work, I'm
Thank
sure.
you for being kind.
You woke up this board, so.
No, we just have a lot of questions ourselves. Mark,
No,
Yeah.
Mark and I have been
that's
working on this for
Yeah.
years, and
Right,
No, that
yeah.
is absolutely fine. And like I said, it's a work in progress, so.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So
If
thank
have
you.
questions-
Back
oh,
with
sorry.
more.
No, if you have questions on this, reach out.
I
Yeah.
would,
I
yeah,
deal
I would
with
love
this
to meet and.
Part of this every single day
Yeah,
of my
please.
life.
And for many, many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to 6B, the Hermanson property, background information and possible tour discussion. So in the packet, there was a lot of information, historical, from the previous president of the village. So I don't know what other discussion. I know I toured the property in the past. It's
As
an
did
awesome
I.
property. It's not floodplain or waterplain, so we don't have to worry about any water, but it's awesome overall, and it's very generous of them, and which does offer a huge amenity to the village overall. But for that information, I strongly encourage to look at what it was about. They put a lot of information in it in order to make sure that it sustains what it's at.
So why is this coming back up again, just so that we know about it, or what?
So Andy made a request a couple of months ago to Jeff to kind of get this agreement in the packet, just so people are aware of where this property is, what are the restrictions on what can be used. So Jeff included this, and he knows a lot more about this area than I do, but there are maps in here that kind of explain this is the future bike path corridor, parking lot area. There's rules in here about structures that can be, they're limited to a certain size, so like
Right.
small pavilions or benches, things like
And no
that.
parking lots and all that other stuff, yeah, it's got
Yep,
gravel.
yep. So this is more just for information. There's, this property won't transfer to the village until both the Hermsons pass
Right.
away. So we're
That's why I
certainly
was
not,
wondering.
No, it's not that we're moving forward. I
Right.
just
It
wanted
was
to
just for
have the
information.
information, and I mean,
Okay.
at some
Thanks,
point
Leanne.
too, if we could, go for a field trip.
Yeah,
to-
and I'm not
to
sure-
understand the property better.
Yeah, I'm not aware too if there are paths out on the property right now, if it's kind of,
But he
if
didn't
we're
want us
able
out
to
there
go
right
through
now.
there.
No.
Or if that's a future
Yes.
development. So I'll talk with Jeff because he knows a little bit more about the
Sure.
family. But yeah,
Because
if
I was
it's,
the one that brought him in through the whole system and got him, because the town of Oregon turned them down
Right.
and
In
didn't
fact,
want
if you
them.
have questions,
So then they came to me and I worked with them for a while, and then I got Jeff and,
Mike.
Mike Grace involved. And that's when we did it all then.
Yeah.
Sure.
But they don't want anybody on the property until they pass on.
Right, there's still levy on the property and,
Right, right. But it is, if you want to go, Pat would love to take you for a tour,
Sure.
but plan on a 3-hour tour.
Yeah.
Didn't you think, Mark, what
Yeah.
was it, at least 3 hours or 4 hours?
Oh, we got to see a lot of it.
Oh, yeah, he
Yeah.
took us through every tree that fell down and everything, so,
So when, I'm trying, I mean, I know where it is, and right now it's the field there, but that's being developed on the right side of your picture, correct?
that's Netherwood.
That's
so
the
the Highlands and Netherwood is
Netherwood.
over here, correct?
So when they pass, this will all get sucked into the village limits.
Yep, it would be annexed, and then it would be, this area shown on the comp plan as park.
Sure.
And then, yeah, kind of, a lot of the planning looks like has already been done in terms of where paths would go.
Oh,
and-
man,
and things
it's so in-depth that reading through that agreement.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's you're essentially handcuffed when it gets handed over, but I mean, handcuffed limitedly, I mean, so you
Right,
can
but
do
that's why
certain
he wants
things.
it to be
Right.
like that, so people can't change it over.
I understand. I'm not
Yeah.
arguing that point. It's just, I just wanted the information so I know.
When you meet those
moving
wonderful
forward.
people, you'll know exactly why it's done that way. I mean, they're just, his heart, when a tree goes down, his heart just goes, just wonderful people.
Great.
Yep.
For item 7, unfinished business, any other, we had a discussion, student member vacancy, and still looking for plans to fill that up.
You want an update?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you, sir.
So I don't know if anybody's come forward yet, but we've gone about again. We didn't get anyone since the last time. So it went out, every day at the high school, they have a Panther Vision thing, which is information that goes out to the whole entire school. And they did a big piece on it yesterday
Awesome.
about getting, different things. Jim Planner, the principal, gave some ideas on what to put in it as they spoke about it. So they souped it up a little bit, told them it was high paying.
Sounds more exciting than it is.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I can tell you, it went in, today's Tuesday, maybe it was Friday. It's been in the last week, I'd say it that way. So I don't know, I can talk to Jim, see if anybody came forward, but that's who they go, if they're interested, they'll go see him.
Awesome,
So
I'm glad to help,
We
appreciate
tried to
help.
beef it up a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing that,
Yeah.
appreciate
So
taking that.
that's-
initiative.
Maybe they change the semester, will change something.
Excellent, thank
somebody
you.
will come through, but.
Item 8, any other new business? So our upcoming meeting dates, Tuesday, December 13th, as well as Tuesday, January 10th. Any forecasted conflicts with any board members? And that would be good. Are there any items for future business under 8B? Nothing? Okay, very good. Well, let's call for an adjournment.
I'll second.
All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everyone.